I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I was married to Emily for just over 3 years. We met in college, and honestly, I thought she was the one. She was smart, funny, beautiful, the kind of girl everyone admires. We had a pretty good life together, or so I thought. We'd go on little trips, have our routines, talk about the future. Everything seemed perfect until the last few months started to feel off. She was more irritable, snapping at small things, canceling plans last minute and lying about where she was going, that kind of stuff. I chalked it up to stress or work, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something was wrong. Then came the proposal. I decided to do it at the lake house we bought last summer, where we'd spent so many weekends just relaxing and pretending the world was ours. I planned everything out, got her favorite flowers, picked a sunset, and got down on one knee. She said yes, of course, tears in her eyes. It was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life. But even as I held that ring, I couldn't ignore the tiny voice in the back of my head that was warning me, "Are you really sure she's all in?" I brushed it aside. I wanted to believe in this girl. I wanted to believe our future was bright. But deep down, I had this lingering doubt that I was walking into some kind of illusion. The first signs of trouble didn't hit me immediately after the proposal, but they started gradually. I noticed small things, her phone ringing at odd hours, her being secretive about her messages, or her suddenly being busy whenever I brought up plans to go to the lake again. She told me she was stressed out, that she was just working late, or that she needed me time. Honestly, I was willing to accept all that because I loved her. I figured everyone had their moments, and maybe she was just overwhelmed. But then came the nights I'd catch her staring at her phone, hiding it when I walked into the room, or the way she'd suddenly get defensive if I asked about her whereabouts. It wasn't suspicious at first, just the usual little nagging doubts, until I found that phone. That night I had to stay late at work, but I was tired and decided to swing by the lake house to grab something I'd forgotten. I was walking up the driveway, and that's when I saw it. Her phone was on the kitchen counter and it was unlocked. I never normally touch her stuff, but I was curious. I figured maybe she'd left it there, or maybe she was just being careless. I picked it up and scrolled through her messages out of habit, and that's when I saw the text threads that turned my stomach. There were messages from her best friend, Jake, a guy I knew well, a guy I trusted, the kind of trust that makes your stomach sink. The messages weren't just friendly banter, they were flirtatious, suggestive, and downright cruel. They talked about meeting up for sex, about how bad she wanted him, how she loved the thrill of sneaking around. There were explicit pictures, too. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like a punch to the gut. My hands started trembling, my stomach twisted, and all I could think was, this girl I loved, my wife, my future, had been betraying me behind my back. I felt numb, frozen in place, staring at the screen. I didn't even know what to feel first: anger, heartbreak, betrayal. It hit me like a ton of bricks that everything I believed in was a lie. I had no plan at that moment, no idea what I was going to do. I just stood there, clutching her phone, feeling the weight of her deception crushing me. That's when I realized that this wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown affair, right under my nose, at the place I thought was our sanctuary. I left her phone on the counter, my mind racing, and walked out into the night. My heart was pounding, and I knew nothing would be the same after this. I just hoped I'd figure out how to survive what was coming next. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying that damn phone, those messages, her face when I confronted her last night. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she sit there and lie like that, call me husband, her partner, and then cheat with Jake, my best friend? It felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I was furious, but at the same time I felt this crushing wave of sadness. I had trusted her more than anyone, and now that trust was shattered into 1,000 pieces. I started piecing everything together. The little things I ignored, the weird excuses she made, the late nights she claimed were work, the strange calls she'd take in the bathroom or in her car. All of it made sense now. She'd been lying to me for months, probably longer. That realization made my stomach turn. I thought about the proposal, that perfect moment, and then about the lies that had been hiding in plain sight. It all felt so fake, like some twisted game I'd been played for a fool. I decided I had to confront her. There was no way I could keep pretending everything was normal. I didn't want to be that guy who ignores the signs and gets blindsided. I wanted her to tell me the truth, no matter how much it hurt. So I called her. Her voice was cool, bitchy even. When she answered, she was annoyed I was bothering her early and she tried to brush it off, saying she was busy with work. I cut her off, told her I knew about Jake, about the messages, and about everything. There was a silence on the line that felt like the world stopping. She immediately started to lie, of course. "Mike, you're paranoid, you're overreacting. That's just Jake being a good friend, nothing more." She told me I was imagining things, that I was insecure, that I was crazy for thinking she would cheat on me, but I knew better. I told her I saw the messages, that I knew she was lying. Her voice got bitchy, defensive, almost angry. "You don't understand, Mike. Jake and I are just friends. You're making a big deal out of nothing. We're not even doing anything, it's just sex talk. It's harmless." Yeah, harmless until I saw the explicit pictures. That's when I lost it. The way she lied, it was like she thought she could just spin her way out of it. She tried to blame Jake, say he was the one pushing things, that she was just weak, that she didn't mean for it to go so far, but I wasn't buying it. I could hear the lies in her voice, the way she was trying to act innocent, like I was the crazy one. It made me even angrier. How could she look me in the eye and lie so easily? How could she betray me like that, right at the moment I was about to make her my wife? That whole morning I was just spinning. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly a little broken. I couldn't process what I was feeling, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I told her to come over so we could talk face to face. She didn't want to. She threw a fit, called me insecure, said she didn't owe me explanations and that I was overreacting. Classic. That bitchy attitude of hers really shined through, but I didn't care anymore. I was done with the lies. I was done with the betrayal. I just wanted the truth, and I wanted it now. When she finally arrived, her face was full of that fake smirk she always put on when she thought she could manipulate her. Way out of a situation, I stared her down, told her I knew everything. She snapped back with her usual bitchy tone, claiming she had no idea how I could be so paranoid, that Jake was just a friend, and that I was overacting because I couldn't handle her. Right, that's what she said, but I wasn't buying any of her bullshit anymore. I could see right through her act. That's when I realized that the woman I married was no longer the woman I thought I knew. She was a liar, a cheat, and a master manipulator, and I was the fool who didn't see it coming. After that confrontation, everything changed. I felt like I was walking around with a weight on my chest that I couldn't shake off. My mind kept circling back to that moment, and the betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible. I was furious, but I also felt this gnawing sadness, like I'd lost the girl I thought I knew, the person I'd trusted with my life. The pain was raw, and I knew I had to figure out what to do next. I couldn't just sit there and let her brush it off, act like nothing had happened. I needed a plan, a way to get some form of justice for myself. I decided to start digging quietly. I spent hours analyzing her phone, looking for more clues, more proof. I found some text exchanges with Jake that I hadn't seen, more explicit stuff, plans to meet up, even talk about sleeping together again. It was clear she was still involved, still lying, still sneaking around. I also noticed her acting weird around her friends, avoiding certain conversations, and giving me that bitchy look whenever I asked about her day. She was trying to hide it, but I knew the truth. I felt like I was starting to see her for who she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with anything. One night, I decided I'd had enough of the pretending. I set her up with a little test. I knew she'd be going out with her friends, so I left my phone in the living room, turned on the voice recorder, and hid in the bedroom. I wanted to hear what she'd really say when she thought I wasn't listening. Nervous, what if she turned into the bitch I'd already seen? But I had to know the truth, and what I heard was worse than I expected. She was trash-talking me, saying I was paranoid, that I was jealous, that I was making a mess of everything. She was openly discussing her plans to see Jake again, saying she'd tell Mike she's busy and that she'd find a way to see him secretly. That moment hit me like a punch to the stomach. I felt sick. All those months of doubts, all those little lies, they were true. She was cheating on me with my best friend Jake. I couldn't believe it. I thought I knew her, thought she loved me, but she was just using me. Using my trust, my love, everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the recordings, the texts, her voice saying all those things. I was sick of being played for a fool. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I couldn't just confront her directly again. I had to be smart. I had to win this game somehow. In the days that followed, I started planning. I couldn't just leave her, not without exposing her completely. I wanted her to see the damage she'd done, to understand just how badly she'd betrayed me. And I knew I had to do it in a way that would hit her where it hurt, her ego, her reputation, her sense of control. That's when I decided I'd leak those private messages, that I'd send her friends and family the truth, so everyone could see who she really was. I wanted her to feel exposed, humiliated just like I'd been. I was angry, but I also needed justice. I didn't want her to ruin me, but I wanted her to regret every lie she told. That plan took some time to set up. I crafted a message, made sure the evidence was clear, and then I pushed send. I sent it to her closest friends, her family, people who would see her for what she was. I wanted her to know that I wasn't going to take her betrayal lying down. I wanted her to feel the chaos, the shame, the loss of control. And sure enough, the fallout was instant. Friends started distancing themselves. Her parents called her in. Shock, and she was left scrambling, trying to deny everything. But the dam had broken. Everyone knew she was a cheat, a liar, a manipulative bitch. And I finally felt a little bit of relief, like I'd taken back some power, even if it hurt me to do it. In that moment, I realized how much this whole thing had changed me. I'd gone from being the happily married guy to someone who was forced to fight for his dignity. It's a strange thing, losing someone you loved so deeply, but I learned something important. You can't let people lie to you, cheat on you, and walk all over your trust. Sometimes the only way to reclaim yourself is to hit back hard. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do know that I'm done being played, done being the fool. And I hope somehow I'll find a way to rebuild myself first, then whatever's left of that broken marriage. After I sent out the expose, the aftermath was immediate and brutal. Her phone practically blew up with calls, messages, and confrontations from everyone she knew. I could hear her screaming, crying, and denying everything. But it was all just noise to me. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because the truth was out and I no longer had to wonder or wait for her to slip up again. Anger because I knew this wreckage was her doing, her choice to betray everything we had built. She tried to spin it, of course. Denials, accusations, crying fits. She called me jealous, insecure, a crazy husband who couldn't handle the truth. But her words were hollow. Everyone saw her now, the bitchy, manipulative woman who lied her way through her life. She stormed around the house, trying to salvage what was left, telling me she loved me, asking for forgiveness, promising it was all a mistake. But I wasn't buying it anymore. My heart was cold. I looked at her with a mixture of disgust and pity, realizing that the girl I married was gone, replaced by a liar who thought she could get away with anything. The next few days were a nightmare. She was trying to save face, but it was too late. Her reputation was crumbling, and I was just trying to keep my own sanity intact. I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible, and now I was left trying to piece myself back together. I started staying out later, avoiding her, trying to process what had happened. Every time I saw her bitchy smirk or heard her fake tears, I felt more disgusted. I couldn't believe I had been so blind, so stupid to see her as anything other than a manipulative liar. But here's the thing, I also started to realize what I deserved. I deserved better than a wife who cheated on me with my best friend, lied about everything, and then had the audacity to play victim when caught. I thought about all the good times, all the promises she made, and it made me sick to my stomach. This wasn't the life I wanted. I didn't want to live in a lie, and I definitely didn't want to be with someone who treated me like an idiot. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. If she wanted to keep pretending everything was okay, I was going to give her a wake-up call she'd never forget. I started researching legal options, talking to a lawyer, and figuring out how to get out of this mess with some dignity and tact. I knew I couldn't just pack up and leave without consequences, but I also didn't want to stay and be a victim of her manipulations. The most painful part, honestly, was the way she kept trying to manipulate me even after everything. She'd beg, cry, try to guilt-trip me, saying she was sorry and that she loved me, but I saw right through it. Love. That was gone the second I saw those messages. Respect. Completely shattered. I kept telling myself I had to be strong, that I had to put my own mental health first. I started seeing a counselor to help me process the betrayal, but deep down, I knew I'd carry this scar for a long time. One night, I finally confronted her directly, telling her I was done. Done with her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. I told her she'd ruined what little trust I had left and that I was leaving. I didn't want to hear her fake apologies or her bitchy excuses. I just wanted her out of my life. She tried to argue, to plead, but I cut her off. I told her she was a terrible wife, an even worse person, and that I was finished playing her game. When I walked out that door, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with heartbreak. I knew I was starting a new chapter, one where I would try to rebuild, even if it meant starting from scratch. In the end, I learned a lot about trust and betrayal. Sometimes, the people you think are your everything turn out to be the ones who hurt you most. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this, but I do know I'll never let someone lie to me like that again. If anything, this whole ordeal taught me to trust my gut, to be more cautious, and most importantly, to value myself enough to walk away when someone proves they're not worth it. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar finds the strength to do what's right, because nobody deserves to be played for a fool. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I wasn't just dealing with the betrayal, but also the crushing realization that my entire marriage was a facade. I felt like I lost a part of myself, like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I thought about her bitchy smirk or the way she'd lied so effortlessly, I felt anger rising up again. But beneath that, there was a deep, lingering sadness, the kind you can't just shake off. I moved out of the house, stayed with a friend for a little while, trying to get some space and clarity. I didn't want to stay near her, didn't want to see her fake tears or hear her manipulative voice anymore. I needed time to process, to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. I also started seeing a therapist who helped me confront the feelings I'd buried deep: betrayal, humiliation, anger, heartbreak. Honestly, it was a roller coaster. Some days I felt strong, ready to rebuild and move on. Other days I just felt numb, like I was walking through a fog. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it coming? How could she lie so blatantly, so convincingly? The worst part was knowing she'd probably been doing this for months, maybe longer. That thought made me feel sick. I was angry at her, but I was also furious at Jake, my supposed best friend, for crossing that line. How could he betray me like that? And for what? Some sex, some fleeting thrill. It felt like my entire world had collapsed and I was left trying to pick up the pieces. I started to see that I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I had to make a decision. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay and stay under the same roof with her, but I also didn't want to rush into anything. I gave myself time to breathe, to think clearly. I reached out to a divorce lawyer just to see what my options were. The more I learned, the more I realized I had the upper hand. I didn't want to be tied to someone who had no respect for me, who used and manipulated me. I deserved better, and I was no longer willing to settle for less. Meanwhile, she kept trying to manipulate me, crying and saying she loved me, claiming she'd change. That bitchy attitude of hers hadn't gone away. She still had that "I'm better than you" vibe whenever she thought she had the upper hand. Honestly, I just ignored her most of the time. I knew her game, and I wasn't about to fall for it again. Every time she tried to guilt-trip me, I reminded myself of what she did, of the lies she told, of the betrayal I couldn't forgive. The hardest thing I had to do was communicate with her about the split. I made it clear that I wanted out, that I was done with the lies, done being her fool. I told her she could stay in the house while we sorted out the divorce, but I wanted boundaries, no more manipulations, no more pretending. She got angry, accused me of abandoning her, said she'd lose everything, but I just kept my boundaries firm. I knew I couldn't let her control me anymore. I had to take charge of my life even if it hurt like hell. Now I'm in a weird place. I'm still healing, still trying to trust myself again. Part of me feels relief, part of me feels broken. But I've learned some tough lessons. Never ignore the small signs. Never let someone manipulate your trust. And most importantly, never stay somewhere you're not wanted or appreciated. I still think about that lake house, about the proposal, about all the dreams I had. But I know I'll build new ones that don't include betrayal, lies, or people who don't value me. I hope anyone else going through this realizes that, even in your darkest moments, you have the strength to walk away and rebuild. You're worth that. Looking back now, I honestly don't recognize the guy I was before all this happened. That version of me was naive, trusting, maybe even a little blind. I thought I had everything figured out: marriage, love, a future. But Emily, she proved me wrong in the worst way possible. The betrayal cut so deep I thought I'd never recover from it. But here I am, months later, still standing. I've learned that sometimes the universe throws you a curveball so hard it breaks you, but you've got to find a way to pick up the pieces. I've come to realize that the most valuable thing I can do now is rebuild myself, trust again, but this time more carefully. I've started focusing on my career, on my friends, on what makes me happy. It's not about revenge anymore, it's about reclaiming my life and dignity. I don't hold any anger for her anymore, just a quiet acceptance that some people are just not meant to be part of your story. And that's okay. Sometimes the worst pain is actually a gift in disguise because it forces you to see what really matters. The truth is, I've learned a lot from this experience. Trust is fragile and betrayal is brutal, but I also learned that I am stronger than I thought. I don't need her or Jake to define me. I've got my own path now, one I'm finally starting to walk with confidence. And I want anyone reading this to know, don't settle for less. Never ignore the signs and never let someone treat you like you're disposable. If someone betrays you, don't be afraid to walk away. The pain might be intense, but it's temporary. The freedom and newfound respect for yourself last forever. As I close this chapter, I feel lighter. I can finally breathe again, even if the scars are still there. I know I'll move on, I'll find happiness again, maybe even love someday, but this time smarter and more cautious. I hope my story serves as a warning and maybe a little hope. Because the truth is, no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way out, always a way to rebuild. And I believe that now more than ever.